You know, it's a beautiful day out here today, but it is still wintertime, and it's way too early and way too cold out most days to be able to put anything into the garden. But I'm going to show you a way today that you can have those fresh greens and salads and things like that all winter long by growing them super easy in a spare room in your house, or even an easy way to do it in the summertime. I've got some really cool things to show you today, so let's get to it. Okay, so this is my Aero garden. I got two of them, Aero garden. That sounds kind of funny, but I got two of them. They're fantastic little machines, really. These things work great. It's a pretty straightforward, simple process to grow. You've got these little, this one didn't sprout, so I just got it plugged in. I'll bring you in close here in a minute and show you, but you've got these little seed pods that, here, let me get that, like this, and they come pre-planted. This one was with Rogue, I don't know, some kind of French word, lettuce. It was in this Aero garden originally. It never sprouted, and this parsley, when I started it in this Aero garden, it was a little bit shorter than everything else, so I moved it over here, put this one in the empty spot there, and I did that to prevent algae from growing around it and that kind of stuff. But it's a pretty simple process. You take these little seed pods, or little, you know, whatever they are called, I don't know what they're called, Aero garden things, but they've got seeds already in them. You just basically just stick it down in there, put the little plastic cup on it until the thing sprouts and grows up just past the little plastic. Leave that on. That prevents the algae from growing up, and it also tells you what it is. So once they grow up past the top of that, then you just remove this, and that's pretty much it. It comes with plant food, so you have to fill this thing up with plant food every, I've got about 4 days left. It's like 14 days. You've got this little bottle of plant food right here. This one takes 1 capful, this one takes 2 capfuls. This one is an Aero garden sprout, which it came with another tray here. So it'll grow 3 plants. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. It'll grow 3 plants. And it came with an herb kit, which was the basil, the dill, and the parsley. And then this one was the Aero garden harvest 360, which came with the lettuce green mix, which I kind of prefer, honestly. I really like to have the fresh herbs, and it's kind of nice to have both of them. But I really like having some fresh salad greens in the wintertime, and it's cold outside right now, and these things are growing. This has been going 24 days since I put these in, and you can see how the lettuce is growing. I mean, it's just all filled up. I'll bring you in close here in a second and let you see it. One mistake I made with the Aero garden here, this light will raise up and down. I forgot to say that. You can kind of look it up and figure out the features. But one mistake I made is I started all these seeds, the herb seeds, at the same time. And it says on there how long it's going to take for the seeds to germinate. This one says 6 to 12 days. I don't remember the dill. I can't remember how much it is. It's pretty quick. But the parsley is 14 to 21 days. And I started them all at the same time, which meant the dill was actually the first, I think, to sprout. And it was up this tall, and the basil was up, you know, that tall. You probably can't see me, but anyway, the dill was up like that tall. The basil was up pretty close to that much before the parsley even sprouted. And it grows a little bit slower. So what happens is these kind of overcrowded it, and it wasn't getting enough light. Now, these do have their own contained light. They go on and off automatically. The only thing, you have to keep it full of water. I do kind of like about this model here is that it's got a clear window here, so you can kind of see where the water level is, and it's down pretty far. You know, initially when you put water in these, this one here has a container or a opening here to put water in, but it doesn't have the clear. You have to look inside to see where the water level's at. It will tell you when it needs to have water added to it, but it's really best to keep it filled up and not let it run down to that level where it says add water. Initially when you start these plants, I should say these herbs were started month and a half, let's see. Yeah, about a month and a half. So we're going about 45 days roughly with these. And I've been harvesting pretty heavily, especially the dill, because it's growing like crazy. It's huge. And I'm getting to a point now where I'm going to have to cut off some of these. I've already cut off quite a bit. I harvest, I don't know, 5 or 6, fronds, little, stems with fronds on them about every day on this thing. It grows all the way up to the light. Now, so I try to keep it trimmed back because I've got the light as high as it'll go. Try to keep it trimmed back to where it's about the height of the basil itself, but it's it just goes crazy. So it's a pretty productive system. It works really, really well. The only complaints I have about this is that really, well, here, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. Like I said, when you first start these, you fill them up with water, and they'll go for quite a while before you need to add any water to it. But when the plants start getting about this tall, I have to add water to this thing about every 2 days, roughly. I'm gonna have to fill it back up. I just filled it up yesterday, and you probably can't see this in the film, but it's already that much lower on water than when I put water in it. So it's gonna have to be filled up again tomorrow. And they both have little fill lines in them that tell you where they're at. You don't need to see all that. It's pretty self-explanatory when you get the thing out. So the only problems with these, they are pretty much a very simple, straightforward way to grow some greens, some herbs. You know, I've seen people do some tomatoes and things like that. You're looking at like cherry tomatoes, like a dwarf variety of cherry tomato in there, which are not really all that great in my opinion. So I don't think it's worth trying to grow anything but like herbs and greens in here. There's probably some other things you could get away with, but it does a great job for salad greens and herbs, as long as you're going to use them. This dill, or this basil plant, really needs to be pruned back. I'm just waiting to use it. It's got a pretty good sized stem here with the leaves at the top, and I can prune it all the way back to there, about this height right here. That would encourage it to get a little bit bushier and not grow quite as tall. So I'm going to do that, but I need to wait until I'm ready to use it, or I could just dry it. That's what I've been doing with the dill. The dill has gone crazy. I've pruned it back heavily. Every single day I come in here and prune off as much as I can, and it grows right back up to the light the next day. So it's really good. But I've been drying it, and we've got a little spice jar, about that big, just a small one about that big around. It's almost full of dried dill right now, so that's pretty nice to have as well. Let me bring you in a little bit close, and we'll talk a little bit through about, the only thing I can see is kind of the downfalls of trying to go with a system like this entirely to grow your greens, and things in the wintertime when you're trying to grow them in the house. Okay, so here we go. Now we're up a little bit closer. You can see, my basil's doing really well. The dill, I mean, you can tell down here, I've trimmed off a ton of dill. I mean, it's super productive. The thing I'm running into right now is like pieces like this right here. When that hits the light, I mean, there's no leaves down here. So when you prune it back, what you want to do is like this one here. I don't know how well that's showing up in film, but it's got leaves right here, so I can prune it back to that point right there and leave those stems with leaves on them. It'll continue to grow. But if I take the top of this one off, there's no other leaves or anything down here. This will just die. So it's going to have to come off at the base whenever it's time to trim that. And there's quite a few of them that way. You can see I've already topped almost all of these, but they continue to grow. So I've been getting quite a harvest out of this. It's great. And I do have new growth down here. I mean, I've got smaller ones, so and there's new growth starting down here. So I think this will continue to go for quite a while. Here's the 360 model. With all the salad greens in it. We're getting ready to harvest some of those, probably the first time tonight. We haven't harvested any off of this yet. And my parsley is doing really well. It's really finally starting to take off. It just, here's the spot where it originally started. Actually, it started over here. I moved things around just to give them more room. And I did, like I said, I put that over there to keep algae from growing. If you don't block the light, this is a hydroponic system, and if you don't block the light because you got nutrients in the water, you're going to get algae growth on it, which is not a huge issue. It's just, it will steal some of your nutrients, make your plants kind of compete for that. So here's the only thing that I really don't like about this system is that I can only grow 5 plants in here, which is pretty decent actually. I mean, it's a pretty small, compact system, but if I want to expand past that, I'm gonna have to buy a new system. Let me put this camera back on the tripod and we'll talk more about it. All right, so like I said, if I want to expand this out and I want to grow more than 5, because really 5 plants of lettuce is not that much. I mean, I'm gonna go through that pretty quick, and then I'm gonna have to start all over again. Now this is cut and come again lettuce, so I can harvest it and get several harvests off of that. But it's not, I can't have a salad every day because I'm gonna go through it pretty quick. If that makes sense. And if I want to expand this and grow more, then I've got to invest in more machines. Now this one here was about $40, I think. We got it on clearance. So if you watch these things go on sale fairly regularly, they can be pretty expensive, but you can get pretty good deals on them. You can find them on clearance sales, you can get coupons on them and all that. So just if you're patient, you can find them a little bit cheaper. I bought this one here at Walmart, I believe, and it was right at the beginning of spring, and they had them out there for $40. So I bought one. This did, like I said, it came with another tray you can switch out and you can start plants in, so that's pretty convenient. And I think it will start like 12 or 15, 16 plants, something like that. It starts quite a few. So it'd be a good thing to use to start like tomato seeds, pepper seeds, any of those kinds of things. You could start them in here pretty simply. I do like this light. The lights on both of them are very nice. They've got kind of not a full spectrum, but a broad spectrum, so it's the perfect amount of light for all these plants. I was a little worried when you start this, the light only goes down to like right here, this level right here, and your plants are just tiny. So I was a little worried they were going to get real leggy trying to reach for the light, but it's plenty bright enough and it's got the right spectrum. It wasn't an issue at all. I've got this light up. There it is. Now it's as high as it'll go. So I'm starting to run out of room there. This one's still got quite a bit of room to be able to go. This system right here, it's a fairly expensive system. They usually run $150 or so. I think we got this one on sale for like $60. So I've got about $100 in both of these just to get them going. Now I can grow, lots of plants in here, just not at the same time. I can get 5 in this one, 3 in this one. And if I want to expand, I've got to invest in another one of these systems. The nice thing is it's all pretty much automatic. It tells you when it needs plant food. This one doesn't have the readout on it, but it does have a light on the top that you can't see that'll blink when it's time to add plant food. You just tap it to reset it and go another 2 weeks. This one has a digital readout. It tells you how many days it's been, how many days you've got to go until you need to add nutrient to it. It's pretty, like I said, pretty self-explanatory once you get in to get going. But again, kind of limited. I can only grow these 5 plants. It's a fairly small, compact thing. So I wanted to show these off because these are very convenient, very nice, great for herbs, great for lettuce, salad greens, that kind of thing. The really nice thing about the herbs is that, if you're one that uses herbs in your cooking, this is great. You got fresh basil, I got fresh dill, fresh parsley, and they've been going for a while. We've been harvesting off of this. I've harvested quite a bit of basil already and a ton of dill off this plant right here, and it's still going. It's still producing new growth. So, it looks like there's going to be a chance that I'm going to be growing quite a bit more, or getting quite a bit more out of it before I have to start all over again. So that's all really, really nice. These are great systems, but it's not going to be a huge system. So now I'm going to show you another way that I think is probably even simpler to grow your own lettuce, your own salad greens. It's going to work for pretty much any greens. Spinach, bok choy, arugula if you want to grow arugula, lettuce, all those kinds of things. Spinach might be a little tricky, but I think it would work for spinach as well. Haven't tried it, but I think it would work. We're going to go show you how to grow. If you want to expand, it's a lot easier to expand and a lot cheaper to do that. So let's go get some lettuce seeds started. And once they get sprouted and all, we'll get them going in my new hydroponic system. Okay, let's see. Are we in? Okay, so this system is going to allow you to grow a whole lot more greens, and you can expand it at pretty much as you want, a lot cheaper. So what I've got set up here, I'm going to have to start some seeds. I'm going to do that in just a little, this is an old potato salad container. It doesn't really matter what kind. I'm going to be starting them in just some potting mix is what I've got on hand. You can start them a lot of different ways. This is going to work just fine. What I've got is a couple of shop lights set up here. These are cheap shop lights, about $10 a piece. The important thing is that you are going to need lights if you're growing them inside. Now, if you're going to be growing these in a greenhouse or like during the summer outside or any of that kind of stuff, then the lights are not going to be an issue for you, and it's much, much easier to expand at that point. But you are going to need to make sure that you get a certain type of light bulb. Let me see. I've got a couple back here I can pull out that'll be a little bit easier to show you. Oh, there we go. So these are just regular fluorescent lights. They have, this is a, is it 6,500 Kelvin. And the Kelvin rating's right there on the light. That's what you're going to look for. This is a 6,500 Kelvin. I use one of these. This is a little bit of a warmer bulb, means more of a yellow color. And then I use one of the, let me see if this one is it. Yeah, this is it. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. That 6,500 Kelvin is a little bit more of a cool light, so it's more of a bluish light. And this one here is a little bit more of a warmer light. This is a 3,000 Kelvin. Now, the ideal for like growing lettuce and greens and that kind of stuff, really, it's going to be right around the 5,600 Kelvin range. But I put one of each in each one of these fixtures. So I've got one warm bulb, one cool bulb, and the same thing in the other fixture. So that'll come in important whenever we get this lettuce sprouted. We're not going to be growing it in dirt, so you're not going to need a ton of dirt. I'm going to show you how to do it, but we've got to get some seeds sown and some lettuce sprouted before we can get to that point. So let me wet down this potting mix just a little bit. Let me find my seed packet, and we'll get some seeds going. Maybe I should bring you in a little bit closer for this. What I'm going to be planting is black-seeded Simpson. Now, I don't need a ton of seed in here. I just need a couple of sprouts. We're not going to worry about turning the lights on yet. They don't need lights to get them sprouted. It's when they sprout, we're going to have to add the light at those. I've got these hooked up on chains to the shelf above them so I can lower the light down. These are not super bright, not high range lights, not, what did I say on the other? Spectrum, there we go. Not broad spectrum lighting, and it's not super bright. So these are going to have to be very close to the plants. You want them just almost touching the plants. But we're not going to have to worry about that until we get these seeds sprouted. So to sow these seeds, it's a pretty straightforward, simple process. Once you get the seed packet open, give me a second here to open the seed packet. Get a handful of seed out here. That should be plenty. I really don't need much seed at all because we're going to be growing just individual plants. And the process, I could bring you in close, but it's not, I don't know that it's really necessary. Well, all I'm going to do is take these seeds that I've got in my hands. You can see lettuce seed, very, very small. It is probably best to go ahead and do this with a container variety of seed and probably not try to grow like an extra large cabbage or something like that in here. You could do it, it could be done, but it's probably better to go with a container type variety of lettuce. Now I like this black seeded Simpson because it is a good container variety. It grows well in containers, and it's there's several varieties that do. Most of your lettuces do, but this is not what you probably want to. You could grow a head style lettuce that forms a head like iceberg lettuce or something like that in there. But I really I prefer to grow these loose leaf lettuces because they're cut and come again. So that means you can harvest them and they'll grow back, and you'll get several harvests out of them before you have to start all over again. So I've got my seed just sprinkled on the top here. I need to get a little bit more potting mix. I'm just going to sprinkle that over. Actually, I'm not even going to do that. I'm just going to push them down in there in the dirt just a little bit. Now, lettuce seed, you don't want to plant it very deep. So you really don't push it way down in. I'm just making sure that it's got contact with the soil, brushing a little bit over the top of it, and that's it. But again, don't go really deep. That should do just fine. I would say when you're starting seeds this way for this method, you're going to want to use a loose medium to start them in. You don't want hard packed soil. You want a good, nice, loose potting mix. I'm going to water these down just a little bit, and then I'm going to put the lid on it, and that's going to help keep the humidity inside. There's not much else to do for a couple of days, so we'll come back in a couple of days whenever these get sprouted. We'll show you what steps we're going to take next. It is probably best if you're having a hard time getting them to sprout. It could be because it's, right now it's wintertime here, so if you're starting them in the wintertime and it's a little bit chilly, you might want to move them to a warmer spot. Lettuce is going to ideally be around 70 degrees. 65 to about 75 degrees is a good temperature to have it for sprouting lettuce. So you could put this on a heat mat. You could set it on, put it in a warm room in your house, set it on top of your refrigerator, whatever. That's going to help your seeds going to sprout just a little bit better if you're having an issue getting them to sprout. I think they're going to be okay in here. I don't think I'm going to have any issues. So I'm not going to worry about moving them. We're going to leave them back here. This room is about, it gets down to probably about 60 degrees, somewhere around in there. It's on the back end of my house, and we've only got like one heater vent in here. It's the furthest from the thermostat, so it probably gets a little bit cooler in here than it does in other rooms, but I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think we're going to go ahead and be able to get these things to sprout. They may just sprout a little bit slower than what they normally would if you were to have them a little bit warmer, but that's not a big issue. I'm not in a huge hurry. So again, I'm going to let these things sprout, then we'll come back. We'll show you kind of the next steps that we're going to take. We are going to be growing these hydroponically, but we're going to be using what we call a Kratky method. It was developed by a guy named Kratky, which is just super dead simple. So you're probably going to enjoy this quite a bit. This is even more hands-off than the Aero gardens are. But we got to get these things sprouted before we can do anything else. So we'll be back with you in a couple of days. All right, so these seeds have sprouted. It's been about 4 days. Let me get them out from underneath this light. We'll show you kind of what they look like here. Hopefully, I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's see if I can block some light here maybe. I don't know if that's showing up or not. We'll get the camera off there here in a second and look at it. So once the seeds are sprouted, I'm going to take the lid off. And I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but the lid goes on here when they're germinating, just to keep it kind of moist and damp in there, because they need the water and the humidity and all that to go ahead and germinate. But we want to take the lid off as soon as they sprout. And we want to get them under some light. So my lights don't go down far enough, and I actually kind of made a mistake here. I've got them sitting on a tape measure to lift them up as high as I can, and I got the lights sitting basically right on top of the container. The mistake I made is I used a container that's a little bit too deep. I should have either put some filler in the bottom and raised that all the way up to where the dirt comes up to the very top of the container, or used a different container that it doesn't need to be as deep as what I used. I didn't even think about it. I could cut the sides away, but really ideally, because these are not super bright lights, they're not like the Aero garden lights, they're not super powerful, super bright, these are just cheap shop lights. They need to be very close to the plants. Ideally, you want them just almost touching the top of the plants. So my only concern is that if these start to get a little bit leggy, they start reaching for the light, and then they get leggy and fall over, something like that. But other than that, we should be good. So let me get the camera off here, bring you in, and show you what they look like right now. And there, you can see them. Bunch of little baby lettuce, all sprouted up. And again, I've got the light as close as I can get it to them. Ideally, it would be much closer than that, because we've got probably a 4-inch gap, right here to here where the light is, and I'd like to have it down just almost on the top of them. But hopefully it's enough light to keep them from reaching too long and too far, getting too leggy. Okay, so we've got a couple more days before we need to do anything with these things other than just making sure that they stay watered, that they don't dry out. Just lightly mist them once or twice a day if you need to. Once a day is probably plenty. You don't want them drenched, you don't want them just sopping wet, but you don't want them to really dry out either. So do need to keep an eye on the water. It is pretty dry right now. It's wintertime here in Missouri, so it gets pretty dry, but right now they're doing okay. I haven't had to water them yet. I probably will tomorrow. I better hook this light back up. There we go. Make sure it, whoops. This is kind of a janky little setup here. I should find something besides a tape measure to set them on, but that's what I had handy, so that's what I did. I get kind of lazy like that sometimes. Anyway, again, really the only thing I think I could have done differently, or I should have done differently, I should say, is get that soil level all the way to the top of the container so I can get the lights down a little bit closer to the plants. But hopefully they're going to do okay. We'll come back in a couple of days, probably 4 or 5 days, something like that, maybe 6, whenever they get just a little bit taller. I want to give them a chance to, what you're seeing on these plants right now when you saw them is the first leaves that come out. So I want to give them the chance to get their first set of true leaves, and then we're going to be transplanting them, and I promise you this is going to get way easier from that point on. All right, so we've gone another 4 or 5 days, something like that. The lettuce is really starting to take off, so it's ready to move on to the next step, and I'm going to be growing these hydroponically in these containers right here. These are Rubbermaid Roughneck. There we go, Rubbermaid Roughneck containers. They're food grade 3-gallon containers. I'm going to show you how I set them up here in just a second. What I've got is about 2 gallons. I can't turn it, you can't see it. I'll bring you in close here in a minute and you'll be able to see it. But we got about 2 gallons of water in here so far. I'm going to fill it all the way up to the top when I'm done, but I've got to mix in some nutrients. Let me grab my nutrients. I'll show you what I'll be using as nutrients for these. All right, made it back. So we'll be using Master Blend. Master Blend International Tomato and Vegetable Formula is what we're going to be using here. And I'll put a link down below and put this in my Amazon shop as well. This is where I got it off of Amazon. It was $30-ish for all this stuff. You get like 2 packages of the Master Blend, 2 packages of the calcium nitrate we're going to be mixing together, and then a package of Epsom salt that goes in as well. So you get quite a bit because we're going to be using very little amount of these. Let me get some things out of the way here. We're going to be using very little amount of these. There's a recipe on the package of Master Blend. It says to add 12 grams. This is for a 5-gallon recipe. Add 12 grams of Master Blend, which is this. Dissolve it completely. Add 6 grams of magnesium sulfate or Epsom salt. Dissolve it in water. And then last, add 12 grams of calcium nitrate and dissolve it completely and adjust your solution pH to the desired level. I'm not going to mess with pH checking my water. It's tap water. It's probably fine. But if you do want to pH test it, you're going to want it to be in the, I want to say it's like 6.5 range, somewhere right around in there, especially for growing lettuce and other leafy greens. You can do this with spinach. I think spinach would work pretty well with it, but lots of leafy greens, bok choy, I mean just about anything really as far as leafy greens go. If you're going to want to move up into growing other vegetables, things like tomatoes and things like that, that's a whole nother level. But this is a way to be able to grow super easy lettuce and other leafy greens, so you always have a constant supply of them no matter what time of year it is. So with that being said, I have adjusted the recipe down just a little bit because this is lettuce I'm growing. It's not a heavy feeder like tomatoes and those kinds of things. So instead of 12 grams for a 5-gallon recipe, I go with 10 grams for a 5-gallon recipe. So it's basically a 1:1 to 1/2 recipe. 1 part Master Blend, 1 part calcium nitrate, and a 1/2 part Epsom salt. So that leaves me with, when I did the math on 5 gallons, 10 grams per 5 gallons, that's, what is that for per gallon? That's 2 grams per gallon. I've got a 3-gallon container, so that's 6 grams of Master Blend, 6 grams of calcium nitrate, and then 3 grams of Epsom salt. So I've got to get all this stuff mixed up. I've already got it all measured out in these little containers, and you can kind of see, I mean, that is the calcium nitrate, isn't it? Yes, that's a calcium nitrate. I don't know how well you can tell, but that's how little it's going to take. I mean, and this is it. We're not going to be refeeding these things. This is my Master Blend. That's the first one that goes in. So I'm going to go ahead and dump it in here. I'll bring you guys in close so you can kind of see what we're doing, and then I'll stir it up and get it dissolved. All right, you should be able to see in there now. So first goes my Master Blend. We're just going to dump it in and then stir it around to dissolve it. So I don't know, I can probably find a better thing than a spoon to do it with, but that's what I had handy. So we're going to just stir it around until it gets kind of dissolved. And there's still a few little particles, but for the most part I think it's pretty well dissolved, and some of that may just be dust from the air or whatever, so I think we're good on that. And then goes in the Epsom salt. The Epsom salt goes in next, so that's how much Epsom salt we're going to be using, just a little bit. We're going to stir that around and get that kind of dissolved and mixed in before we add the next phase. I don't know why you have to do it that way, but that's what they say, so I follow the directions on it. That looks pretty well dissolved. And then next finally goes in the calcium nitrate, and that's just how much calcium nitrate we've got there. That's probably going to take a minute to dissolve. Those are bigger clumps. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to need to do at this point is fill this all the way up with water, and I need some way to hold my plants show you what I've got put together here. Some way to hold my plants to where just the roots are in the water. So what I've done is I've cut some holes in the lid here, and I use these pool noodles. I learned this off of another YouTube channel. I don't remember the name right now. I'll find the name and I'll tell you the name of the YouTube channel. But using these pool noodles to hold them. Now, what I've done is I've just kind of cut a hole in here, and you can see it's pretty crude. You could use a hole saw if you wanted to. I just did it with my pocket knife, just kind of traced a hole and cut it out with my pocket knife. It's not the best, but it works. And then I'm going to stick the plant in there and stick that pool noodle down in there to hold that plant in place. It takes the place of like a net cup or something like that. And this is stupid cheap. I mean, I didn't even have to buy it. I had one laying around. But, I mean, you can buy them for $1 for a whole stick that you can cut probably 30 of these little holders out of. The problem is that hole's way too big. If I put a piece of lettuce in there, one plant, it's going to fall through. It's not going to hold it in place. So I took the little chunk, I cut a little chunk out of here so I could squeeze it together a little bit. Took that chunk, and that goes right in the middle here. And then that provides enough area to where I can put my plant in. The roots will hang out the bottom into the solution, and the pool noodle itself will hold it closed, and we just kind of force it in there to hold it in place. So let me get some more water filled in here. I got to get these lettuce plants out of the container. The way I'm going to be doing that is I'm just going to pop basically the whole thing out and then brush the dirt off as much as I can. Try not to tear up the roots too much. It's not a big deal that I get them perfectly clean because there is no pump or anything in here, so we don't have to worry about clogging it up with dirt. But I don't want to just put a whole clump of dirt in there either, so I'm going to kind of clean them up, get them out of here, clean them up a little bit, separate them out, and then we'll be back and I'll get them all situated in here. Okay, so this is kind of cramped quarters. It's hard for me to get in here with you guys in the camera, but I got my container filled pretty much to the rim. I mean, I'm about missing that much water in it just so it doesn't spill out whenever I put this lid on. So now it's time to get my plants all situated in here. And what I've done here, let me show you real quick. I've selected 3 out of that bunch that I just kind of pulled them out. Let me get in camera. Hopefully you can see those. 3 lettuce plants. It was pretty easy. I mean, I just took the whole thing, the whole dirt clob out at once and kind of broke it apart a little bit, and these just pulled right out, rinsed them off a little, got most of the dirt off the roots. So it's pretty simple from here. I'm just going to take one of my little holders here, and it is wet on the bottom, so I know that the roots will be touching the water. I'll just open it up, take my lettuce plant, see if I can do this on camera, and there we go, lay it in there. Lay it in there to where the roots are hanging out down below. You can see them hanging down below. And let's get my lettuce plant a little situated. There we go. I don't know how well you can see that, but the roots are hanging well down below there, so they're going to be in the nutrient solution. I'm not going to have to worry about that. And then I just stick it in there. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Let me get the other one situated real quick. There we go. And one more. And then seal my lid down and get my stuff out of the way here. I have got 2 more containers to do. Well, let me talk about this before we get to moving any of the other stuff in there. Let me get this moved down a little bit. I got another light I got to get going too. There we go. Once I get the other containers in here, what I'll do is I'll lower that light down to where it's just an inch or 2 above the top of that lettuce. What I'm growing here is called the Kratky Method of Hydroponics. There's a Dr. Kratky that kind of developed that method, and has perfected it really. So you can look that up. You can find all kinds of videos about it and all kinds of information about it. But it's pretty simple, straightforward process. Basically, you put the plants in that solution, and they're going to have all the solution, all the water, all the solution they're going to need for the life of that plant right there. He said that it takes a gallon of water to grow a head of lettuce. So this isn't head lettuce, this is more of a leaf lettuce, but still it applies the same. 1 gallon per plant. So I've got a 3-gallon container. I'm going to be able to do 3 plants in each container. And what's going to happen is that water level is going to start dropping over time. Let me back up. Plants really need 3 things in order to be able to grow. They need, well, I guess 4 things. They need light, which we're providing with these lights. They're going to need nutrients of some kind. They're going to need water, and they're going to need air. So they do need oxygen in order to be able to grow as well. Air. So as that water level starts to drop, some of those roots at the top of that plant are going to be exposed, and those become what they call air roots. That takes in the air that the plant needs. So if you ever do have to fill one of these containers back up, you never want to fill it all the way back up to the top. So let's say that you've got lettuce in there and you've been cutting it and it's been regrowing and cutting it and regrowing and cutting it and regrowing, and you're down to very little nutrient solution left. You only want to add about half a container, maybe 3/4 of the container at the most, because some of those roots at the top need to be exposed to the air in order to take in the air. But theoretically, this should last. We shouldn't have to do anything else to this other than just raise the lights as the plants grow. So if you have them in a heated greenhouse, if it's summertime and you can do it outside, you don't have to worry about it freezing, then you can just set them out on your deck and that's it. You're done. Just come back in 20 days or so and harvest your lettuce, and then come back again as it regrows and harvest it again. That's it. That's all you have to do. There's no checking on watering. There's nothing. We're done. All we got to do is raise the lights as the plants start to grow. Couldn't be easier, really. So I've got 3 more containers I've got to build out and get done. I'll kind of give you a walkthrough of how I do that. Let me go get my pool noodle. We'll show you kind of how I do it. All right, so this is the pool noodle. This is just an old one. It's been in the garage forever. And I just take my pocket knife, maybe a 1/2 inch of it or so, something like that, and cut it. And that's pretty much it. And then, let me get this. I can't get it out of the way. That's it. Just cut it off with a pocket knife. And then I'm going to cut a little, like I said, a little piece of it out so it'll be able to close up around it. It doesn't have to be a very big piece, just a little piece that it close up around it. That'll become the middle. I'll probably have to trim this up so it'll go in the middle of that. But that's pretty easy too. Just cut it off and whatever piece fits best in there. That seems a little small. Let's use this one. There we go. Now I've got a holder. That's it. That's all there is to it. So I've got to build out a few more of these. What I'll end up doing is, here, let me show you how I cut the holes in the lid. Put one right in the center. Let me find a pin. This will work. I can do that. So put one right in the center. Close it up. And then just draw a circle around it. That gives me roughly the size of hole that I'm going to need to fit this in. I want it to be a pretty good tight fit, so there's the hole I'm going to be cutting. And like I said, I don't use a drill. You could use a drill, a hole saw if you wanted to. I'm just going to take my pocket knife and cut through it. It's pretty soft, so it's really not that hard to cut, but it's hard for me to show on camera as I do it. So I'm just staying inside the line the best I can, moving fairly slow. There we go. Got a hole cut out. And just to test it out and make sure it works, it works. It fits. So that's all there is to it, to making these. I've got 2 more holes to cut out, and then another lid to do, and get the nutrients mixed up for these other containers and all that, and get it all set up. But that's pretty much all there is to it for now. One thing I will say is you do want to make sure you block light out of these. You want to use a dark container. If you have light in there, because you've got nutrients in the water, it's going to grow algae really bad, and the algae is going to eat up your nutrients and compete with your plant, and you don't want any of that going. So you do need a dark container that blocks out the light. So anyway, let me get these done, and then we'll come back and, show you some updates as they start growing. But that's pretty much it for right now. We'll talk to you soon, though. All right, well, it's been about 15 days or so, 20 days, something like that. I was going to give you updates as we went along, but I realized this video is already getting pretty long, so no sense in just bringing you in going, oh, look, they're growing a little bit. Oh, look, they're growing a little bit more. So we're just going to look at the end result here. Not the end result necessarily. They're not completely done, but it's been 20 days, and they're at a point where we can harvest. So let's take a look here. Let me get out of the way so you can kind of see. I don't know how well that's showing up here, but now I will tell you I did have 2 of these failed. I got 2 containers going here. 2 of them failed. 2 of the plants failed. These 3 all did just fine, no problems. This container right here, only 1 of the plants actually lived. And I'm not sure exactly what I did wrong. I think what I did was maybe one of 2 things. Either I didn't get the nutrients mixed up really well, which I don't think is the case because this plant's doing great, or I disturbed the roots too much whenever I was pulling them out of the dirt. I got a little rushed on the last one. The one I did on camera initially, that's this one right here, and it did fine, no problems whatsoever. But this one here, like I said, 2 of the plants just died. Now, when I first put the plants in there, the next day or 2, they kind of shriveled up a little bit, transplant shock, and then perked right back up and started growing again. On this container right here, the 2 that failed, they never perked back up. They just kind of shriveled up and then died off. The middle one took a little bit time to start growing, but it did eventually start growing. But you can see I've got some pretty good lettuce going right here, and I didn't do a thing. I mean, I literally walked away from this. All I've done is come back as the plants grow, raise the lights up a little bit. That's it. That's all I've done, period. Let me bring you in close. We'll show you kind of what they look like here up close. All right, so this is the container where I had the 2 plants that didn't make it through. Now, what I should have done probably is gone ahead and just restarted some seedlings and then transplanted them in here. They would have done fine, but I was a little lazy and I didn't really feel like doing it. This one right here is the initial one I grew, and you can see it's doing fantastic. Let me open it up here. We'll take a look underneath. Let the camera adjust. And I've got some spots on my lens or something, but hopefully you can see through that and see, look at those roots growing in there. They're doing fine. And you can see the water level's dropped, but it's not, I don't know if you can see the water level. Let me get this camera closer maybe. There we go. Now you can probably see the water level. The water level has dropped, but it's still got plenty in there. It can go for a lot longer, and those roots look great. So this is, again, a cut and come lettuce, so I can go ahead and harvest this off, and it will regrow. More lettuce. I'm not done with this at all. And it's not even at the point where I need to worry about necessarily harvesting it. I mean, it looks great. But anyway, you get the idea. All right, so this is in ways a little bit simpler, a whole lot cheaper than the Aero garden. Maybe not quite as reliable. The Aero garden did do a little better job with starting the seeds right in it instead of transplanting from another container to here. But this is way, way easier. With the Aero gardens, I have to go back and refill the water every couple of days. I have to add plant food every 2 weeks. With this, all I have to do is, once you get the initial sprouts started and get them in here, that's it. Walk away. And again, if this was summertime and I was growing these outside, I'm thinking about switching to this kind of system to grow my lettuce in for the summer, the spring and the summer, because I can put these containers are cheap, $4 or $5 for this one container. And I can have several of these containers going, have all the lettuce I want, stagger them just a little bit, a week or 2 apart, and have plenty of lettuce to have salads, almost every day. And do it all in these containers where I don't have to worry about watering it. I don't have to worry about anything. Just set the container out on my deck, on the rail of the deck, and I got lettuce whenever I want it. It's super easy to do. I'm really impressed with how well these have done. This container right here, I didn't show you inside, but it's doing just as well. The roots of this one plant that made it look great. I mean, it's just perfect. It's a little behind this one because it did, like I said, it kind of shriveled up initially and took a little bit to get going. But once you get them going, there's nothing else to do. I mean, it's just super easy. Plus, there's no pumps to run, anything like that. Now, you could run an air hose in here with an air stone and aerate the water, and they do a little bit better with that, but there's not really, you don't need to. This, you know, if you're growing these outside, you're not even using any power to grow them. So it's just fantastic system. Love it. It is not, you can't claim it to be organic because you are using, you know, synthetic fertilizers for it. But again, super easy. There's no additional fertilizer needing. There's no additional watering needed. Just let them go. That's it. So anyway, I wanted to show you a couple of ways that you can grow, especially greens and things like that in your home in the wintertime, or even if you don't have an outdoor space, you can still do quite a bit inside your house or on a deck or on a balcony or any of those kinds of things, and do very, very well with them. You know, I'm just growing black seeded Simpson lettuce in here, but you can grow pretty much any kind of lettuce you could think of. Iceberg would work even. If you were doing iceberg lettuce, like head lettuce, you'd probably only want to do one per container because they get pretty big and it, you know, might crowd out if you try to do more than one. What else would do well in here? What do you call? Romaine lettuce would do very well in here. You know, if you want to go up bigger plants like tomatoes and things that flower and fruit, you're going to need a little bit better lighting. You're going to need more of a full spectrum, a broad spectrum lighting. And you're going to need a much bigger container to do that in. Tomatoes are heavy, heavy feeders, so you'll need a whole, I've seen people do those in like 55-gallon trash cans with this Kratky Method, but a 55-gallon trash can. So you're going to need a much bigger container for that. But this will work great for any of your small leafy greens, any of those kinds of things is going to work really, really well in here. Look into this system a little bit more. Again, it's Kratky system, Kratky Method. I think it's Kratky. If you just do a Google search for that, you'll find all kinds of information, all kinds of people doing it. It's a very simple, straightforward way to get some hydroponics going and grow some of your own salad greens and things like that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. And as always, God bless.